Today, the Australian government, as part of a global operation, has struck a heavy blow against organised crime, not just in this country, but one that will echo around organised crime around the world. This is a watershed moment in Australian law enforcement history, and at the heart of what our government has been seeking to do ever since we first came to government. We first came to government, one of our first actions was to ensure that Alex Vella went. Then the head of one of the most notorious outlawed motorcycle gangs in this country was cut off from Australia, and he's never returned. We fought that in the courts and won. Ever since that time, that has set the tone of our government's approach to dealing with organised crime in this country. Since then, we have set up the Anti-Gangs Task Force. We've updated Australia's telecommunications legislation to ensure our agencies can track and take down criminal networks. We've boosted the AFP's capabilities to detect, deter and disrupt terror threats and transnational crime with an extra $500 million. Our 2020 cyber security strategy set down $90 million for the AFP to better protect Australians against cybercrime. We have set up the AFP-led Centre for Counter-Child Exploitation. In our most recent budget, we gave the AFP more than $1 billion for a 7-year plan that will help them effectively tackle the risks our community faces from organised crime, criminals and terrorists. Everything we've been doing has been to keep Australians safe. When I became Prime Minister, I said we needed to keep Australia strong, we need to keep Australians safe, and we need to keep Australians together. And while the country has faced so many challenges in recent years, floods, fires, cyclones, and of course the pandemic, we have never taken our eye a day from the threats that are presented, not only by organised crime, but the threats of terrorism to this country. We have maintained the pace, we have maintained the urgency, and we've maintained the application. Our investments to back in our law enforcement agencies, in particular the Australian Federal Police, has enabled them to work as part of major partnerships all around the world and take a leading role to spearhead this assault against organised crime. This has been made possible by not only our belief in our law enforcement agencies, but by backing up that belief with the serious resources they have required to have the confidence to go forward and take part in these significant global operations, but not only take part, but take a leadership role, and as I said, to be the spearhead against organised crime indeed around the world as a result of the support we have provided. Operation Ironside has now charged hundreds of alleged offenders, seized millions of dollars in criminal proceeds, removed weapons from our streets and saved lives, and will continue to. It is an ongoing operation. The operation puts Australia at the forefront of this fight against dangerous organised criminals who peddle in human misery, and ultimately it will keep our communities and Australians safer. More than 4,000 police officers across Australia have been involved in this operation. There's not a day that goes past when I am not thankful for the work of all of our police, all around the country. They step up for our protection every single day, and they take upon themselves great risks. They see things, they're involved in these things that the rest of us as citizens don't have to see or do. And for that, we owe every single police officer our great thanks and to afford them our great respect. And to their families, we thank them as well. It's tough on occasion and many times to be in the family of those who are involved in law enforcement. I know that. And I'm deeply thankful to those families who provide such support to our police officers to enable them to do the great work that they do. Today, it is a day to be very proud, those families, of the work that those police officers, your fathers, your sisters, your uncles, your cousins, your mothers, you can be very proud of the work they're doing today. And I'm incredibly proud of all those who are wearing blue in this country today. I might leave it there to pass it on to the Home Affairs Minister to make further comments on the operation. But what's important as we go forward from this point is not just the support that we continue to provide that you see in the budget, but We need to continue to provide our law enforcement authorities with the powers and the authorities that they need to do this job. Now, I'll go into this later in questions if you like, but there are a series of pieces of legislation that we've been seeking to move through the Parliament, not just over this term, but in some cases over 3 terms. They need these powers to do their job. The AFP and our law enforcement agencies and other agencies that support them need the support of our Parliament to continue to do the job that they do to keep Australians safe. Our government won't shirk from that, and we'd call on all of those in the Parliament to back them in, as we have done so for such a long time, and to get the results that in particular we're seeing today. Karen.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister. Australians should be very proud of the Australian Federal Police. What has been demonstrated today is that here in Australia we have world-leading policing capabilities. Our Australian Federal Police has worked hand in glove with the US FBI to bring down some of the most significant criminals, not just here in Australia, but right around the world. Of about 9,000 officers that have been engaged in this operation across the world, over 4,500 of those officers came from right here in Australia. The relationship that we have been able to draw on, particularly with the FBI but other agencies across the world, has led to the most significant operation in policing history here in Australia. Some of the statistics, and I will ask Commissioner Kershaw to go through those in more detail, but some of the statistics are quite frankly astounding. There have been over 500 search warrants executed. Already there have been over 200 offenders who have been charged. And the charges laid amount to over 500 themselves. There have been 21 threats to kill that have been disrupted and stopped. 104 firearms have been seized, and there has been over $45 million in assets and cash seized. So this is a considerable operation. We are very fortunate in this country to have policing forces that are of the capability of the Australian Federal Police. And I will ask now Commissioner Kershaw to add some more detail in terms of the operation that has taken place.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thanks, Prime Minister and Minister. The AFP's Operation Ironside has allowed the AFP to inflict maximum damage to serious organised crime, with devastating consequences to those who seek to do harm to Australians and Australia's interests. And today, Australia is a safer country because of this unprecedented AFP-led operation. As the Minister stated, more than 4,000 officers from law enforcement in Australia have been involved in executing over 525 search warrants in every mainland state in Australia. And Ironside has arrested and charged who we alleged are some of the most dangerous criminals to Australia. We allege they are members of outlaw motorcycle gangs, Australian mafia, Asian crime syndicates and serious and organised crime groups. We allege they have been trafficking illicit drugs into Australia at an industrial scale. Sadly, criminal gangs are targeting Australia because it is one of the most profitable countries in the world to sell drugs. And for 3 years, this operation has been covert. Australian law enforcement has been arresting and charging alleged offenders, and we have prevented tons of drugs from coming on shore. We have arrested the alleged kingmakers behind these crimes, prevented mass shootings in suburbs and frustrated serious and organised crime by seizing their ill-gotten wealth. As of today, we have charged 224 alleged offenders, including 525 charges laid, shut down 6 clandestine laboratories, acted upon 21 threats to kill, including saving a family of 5, and seized 104 firearms and weapons and almost $45 million in cash. And these figures are likely to increase over the coming days. Collectively, these alleged offenders are facing jail terms that could run into hundreds of years, and some of the charges they are facing carry life imprisonment. Can I thank the police commissioners across Australia who have provided their support and resources for this unprecedented operation in the AFP's 40-year history. And Operation Ironside has been enabled by the extraordinarily smart individuals within the AFP and the unique global reach the AFP has with law enforcement based in 33 countries. Globally today, this operation has seen over 9,000 law enforcement officers deploying to the international effort, and essentially the long arm of the AFP has to get longer so we can keep Australians safe at home and develop the next Ironside. And this operation was born out of the close, long-standing partnership between the AFP and the FBI. Our relationships and international network were mobilised, and it is these partnerships that have made this operation a success. Partnering with the AFP had access to a new encrypted application named Anom and began running it without the knowledge of the criminal underworld. And the AFP provided the highly skilled technical staff and capability to decrypt and read these encrypted communications sent over Anom, real time, giving law enforcement an edge it had never had before. Essentially, we have been in the back pockets of organised crime and operationalise a criminal takedown like we have never seen. The use of encrypted communication apps presents significant challenges to law enforcement, and Anom has given law enforcement a window into the level of criminality that we have never seen before on this scale. This was a small platform compared to other encrypted platforms, and we know that other bigger encrypted communication platforms are being used by offenders to carry out their crimes. And we will work with governments and other agencies to combat the enduring threat of organised crime, ensuring we can continue to innovate and have the technology to disrupt and arrest those who seek to do Australians harm. And I have a message for the criminals targeting Australia and Australia's interests. The AFP will be relentless. We will outsmart you. We will be a step ahead. Operation Ironside is just the beginning, and the AFP is living up to our maxim of keeping Australians safe.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm going to ask Anthony Russo to make a few remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm proud to represent the FBI and stand here today with our Australian colleagues. As you've heard this morning, the law enforcement actions taking place throughout Australia are the result of significant multi-agency, multinational investigative activity. In today's world, crime continues to transverse international borders. The threats we face are too diverse and too complex for any one organization to tackle alone. The FBI and our law enforcement partners across the globe recognize this significant challenge and continue to evolve to overcome the complexities presented by the transnational crime that affects us all. Over the years, we have learned that working together is not just the best option, it's the only option. Partnerships are at the core of everything we do. In just a few hours, you will be hearing from our partners at Europol, including FBI Assistant Director Calvin Shivers from our Criminal Investigative Division, to discuss what has been happening in Europe during the course of this investigation. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, the press conference in San Diego, California, will have already concluded. Special Agent in charge of our San Diego field office, Suzanne Turner, will have explained the origins of the investigation, and you will know how we got to where we are today. It has been said that the most effective weapon against crime is cooperation. So I want to close by thanking the AFP for the commitment to fighting organized crime, their partnership, and dedication to addressing this global threat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Just in conclusion, then we'll take questions on the operation while Mr. Russo and the Commissioner are with us. People sitting at home might be thinking, what can we do to help the AFP in this battle against organised crime in this country? I want to make a few comments about illicit drug use in this country. There's nothing social about illicit drug use in this country. It fuels organised crime in this country. It fuels human misery in this country and in many parts of the world. There's nothing social about it. It's dangerous. And all of us have a responsibility. All of us have a responsibility in our own relationships, in our own families, in our own communities, to be doing what we can to encourage positive behaviours that don't indulge illicit drug use. Illicit drug use ruins lives and it fuels organised crime. You heard it from the Commissioner himself. The reason Australia gets targeted by these criminal gangs is because they believe they can sell their wares. They believe you will be a customer and that you would be inviting them to come and peddle this in our country, on our streets, in our cities, in our regional towns. This reaches right across the country. It's a very serious issue. The AFP will do their job, and we'll make sure that they're resourced to do their job. But we also have a job to do when it comes to illicit drug use in this country. We all have a role to play. Let's keep Australia safe. Let's ensure that illicit drug use in this country does not steal our futures, and particularly for our children. Let's take questions on the operation. Of course, Commissioner and Mr Russo will join us to answer any of those questions.
Commissioner, can I ask you a question, if that's okay? Who actually set up this app? Was it set up by law enforcement, or did they later gain access to it? And is it legal or ethical for law enforcement to be controlling an app which users thought was encrypted?
So first of all, it's legal, and we did use the TOLA passed in 2018 for the first time. So that's that legislation that we have here in Australia, in combination with a legal authority from the FBI. So there were legal authorities used in relation to this app.
Who set it up?
So the FBI have the lead on this. We provided a technical capability to be able to decrypt those messages.
So initially the FBI could not actually analyse what was being communicated. That was where the AFP stepped in.
Yeah, it was as our league, Anthony Russo, said, we worked in partnership and we provided a technical capability to be able to do that.
Was it true, as we read in the paper today, it was done over a couple of years in 2018 between the FBI?
I wasn't there, but apparently, but as you know, some of the best ideas come over a couple of beers, and that was told. Yes.
Commissioner, if it was so effective, why reveal its existence now? Why let it run?
Yeah, part of it has to do with legal authorities, and also just the scale and the speed of the organised crime and the threats to life and the harm that was being done. It was an operational decision made jointly with all the international partners, including the Europol Operation Task Force, which is run out of The Hague.
Can you expand on that? Could you expand on the legal authorities part of your answer? Was it that the FBI or the AFP or Europol only allowed this operation, only authorised it to run for a set period of time, or can you just explain what you meant?
Look, that might be something later on. There is going to be a technical briefing by Assistant Commissioner Ryan, but yes, there was a legal time frame on this operation.
Do you think the people you were targeting had any idea that you were listening and watching?
No, and these messages, let me be clear, when you get access, and it'll come out in court, you'll see that all they talk about is drugs, violence, hits on each other, innocent people who are going to be murdered, a whole range of things. So there's nothing about, it would be like, I need 1,000 kilos at this price, very brazen. We haven't seen it done like that. No attempt to hide behind any sort of codified kind of conversation. So it was there to be seen, including, we'll have a speedboat meet you at this point, this is who will do this, and so on.
Commissioner, when this began, did you have any concept of how big it would become?
We'd always used intelligence, obviously, with the ACIC, ABF, our other Home Affairs partners on getting and state and territory police on the scale of organised crime. But what we've seen is that our targets offshore are moving at an industrial scale. So this is a business, a global business. So for us, we're going to be attacking their three main arms, which is their logistics, their finance arm and their comms, and the communications, knocking out their communications has been a key part of us disrupting organised crime and keeping Australians safe.
Commissioner, you said that it disrupted a mass shooting in a suburb. Is that a terrorism prevention, or can you
No, it's organised crime. So when they that particular case will come out later on, where they were using a machine gun and potentially at a cafe where people would have been no doubt harmed. We were able to, with the cooperation of that particular state police force, take out that individual before they were able to do that.
Can you reveal where that was?
Not at this stage, because of the fact we're still compiling and arresting people in relation to that, and also there's some matters before the court already.
Family of five, you mentioned?
Yes, family of five. So that was part of, the 21 sanctions that we saw, the threat, what we call threat to life.
Was the family removed? Can you elaborate?
We were able to get that individual off the street.
How
Much
detailed
information was
is-
held back over these years because you didn't want to give away, you want to show your hand.
So we did about approximately. We're still getting these stats. There was probably about 100 relevant arrests over the last couple of years in relation to this operation. Just they weren't necessarily attributed to the AFP. They may have been state police arrests.
Commissioner, from the feedback you've had from investigators over the past little while, I presume now some of the people you've got in custody are learning about how it is that they came to be arrested. Just how furious are the criminals that they have been duped?
Well, they all turn on each other. The other thing we learnt was that they actually do a lot of business behind each other's backs, including the presidents of various groups and organisations for personal wealth. So there's going to be a whole lot of disruption there, and our state police colleagues are on alert for that because there's no doubt going to be some tension within the whole system about who owes what drug debt and so on. So that was pretty brazen to see that they were actually disloyal to their own groups.
Could I ask the Prime Minister a question? You're heading overseas to G7. Hakan Ayak, he's been on the radar for 10 years, and I think everyone agrees that this is one of the people that have been targeted. Is in Turkey, has been there for quite some time, and is still operating as an organised criminal. Have you taken this issue up with the Turks and to try and get him back to Australia?
Well, look, I wouldn't go into any specifics other than to say that whether it's there or anywhere else, Australia uses all of its agency to ensure that we can seek to protect Australians. And so whether it's there or anywhere else, whether it is trying to ensure that we are countermanding any terrorist threat or any organised criminal threat, there are multiple engagements we're having at any given time on any number of issues.
Well, we talk about this person all the time, and he's the kingpin. Everyone says the kingpin, but he's still operating. Commissioner, what can be done there?
Look, I think given the threat probably he faces, he's best off handing himself in to us as soon as he can.
Why didn't you elaborate to that? Why?
Well, what you're seeing is he was one of the coordinators of this particular device, so he's essentially set up his own colleagues. My view would be the sooner he hands himself in and to look after his family, he's a wanted individual, the better for him and his family.
So he's a marked man at the moment?
Probably, yes.
Prime Minister, can I ask you, has Operation Ironside revealed weaknesses in our border control as far as deportation is concerned?
There are three things that we need to do. One of them does relate to air and the transport security laws that are in this country. The first one is there's a surveillance legislation amendment which is about identifying and disrupting, and the AFP and the ACIC powers to combat serious crime on the dark web, and in circumstances where anonymising technology is making detection and investigation of serious crime increasingly difficult. We have law in the Parliament at the moment which does not have bipartisan support, which we need support for to give them the powers to do that. The Telecommunications Legislation Amendment in a National Production Orders Bill, that's cross-border access to electronic data, enhancing the effectiveness of Australian investigations and prosecutions of serious crimes, including serious terrorism offences. That bill is there. That does not have bipartisan support. We need it passed. And the third one is the Transport Security Amendment of Serious Crime Bill. That is the bill that is needed to stop organised criminals getting access to our wharves and to our airports. We have sought to have this bill passed through 3 successive parliaments, and it still continues to be opposed by Labor. Now, this is critical to ensure that criminals don't get onto our wharves, that they can't access security credentials and things of that nature. I don't know why they're being protected. I can't give you an answer to that. We want to shut it down. We've been trying to do it for 3 terms of Parliament, and it's time that these 3 bills get bipartisan support through the Parliament so the Commissioner and the other commissioners around the country can better do their jobs. But that said, as we have significantly increased our investment in detections at the border. We have significantly put in place the scanning technologies and the many other technological means, budget after budget after budget, to ensure that we can give not just the Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police, but also of the Australian Border Force, which we established, to do that very job. But when our laws, which we don't have bipartisan support for changing, allow criminals to be able to get credentials and be able to be on our ports, then that is something only the Parliament can shut down. And that's what we need to change, and it should be passed now.
To be clear, were any
please, sir.
trusted
Sorry?
insiders in Australia's airports and ports caught up in this operation? Were communications with those people nabbed in this?
Yes, but I can't go into specifics because that's ongoing, but we've certainly established that serious and organised crime have been able to infiltrate that supply chain, and that's something we'll be working with the Border Force, Home Affairs and the ACIC on the wash-up as part of our intelligence, and there probably, as I said, will be more arrests in relation to this.
Can I just add to that? I mean, and further the earlier answer, there was a 2019 assessment done in December by the ACIC. It identified that 227 individuals holding an ASIC or MSIC, the security permit required to work in sensitive areas of airports and seaports, are recorded on the National Criminal Intelligence Target List, including 167 outlawed motorcycle gang members and associates. That's why we need to change that law, and that's why I needed supported by the Parliament.
Commissioner, did this uncover any corruption?
When you say corruption,
Like police officers or high-ranking individuals?
we have been working with the Australian Commission for Law Enforcement Integrity, so where we have had intelligence in relation to that, we pass that on to them. That'll be something, again, down the track we'll be able to come back to you on with what's occurred there, but we have seen that trusted insider threat, and we've identified some entities and some individuals.
But Commissioner, is it fair to say that there were police officers or law enforcement officers who had downloaded this app or were using a handset thinking that it was an encrypted app?
To my knowledge, not law enforcement officers, no.
Over the back.
Thank you. Commissioner, what kind of inroads has this operation allowed you to get with ransomware? Because obviously that's kind of cutting edge in terms of organised crime at the moment.
Well, obviously, ransomware is probably a whole different, it's a cyber crime, and we know that that's on the increase. I mean, we just encourage Australian individuals and businesses to report it. We think it's underreported. There's some allegations, and we have the Bureau here, but I don't want to get Mr. Russo, our legat here, to answer this. But we know there's some state-sanctioned ransomware attacks or by organised crime, and we know they live in hostile countries. But again, we're working in a partnership way with all of our international agencies when we get a complaint.
Prime Minister, if I can ask you, a couple of years ago, Australia passed some, in some circles, considered controversial legislation to do with accessing encrypted messaging apps. Is it the case that America has chosen us as a partner in this operation because of our, perhaps, legal capability rather than our technical capability? In other words, were we able to do things that other countries were not legally able to do?
Well, I'll leave it to the United States in their various media statements to say what they wish to say. What I know is the Australian Federal Police and our state law enforcement forces are the best in the world. And that's why countries such as the United States choose to partner with us. And certainly, as a government, we make no apologies for ensuring that our law enforcement authorities have the powers and authorities they need to stop criminal thugs and gangs. So, you know.
You said in the statement there that there's likely to be extradition requests. We were talking about a certain individual earlier, but can you go into any more detail on who will be sought from overseas jurisdictions?
Look, not at this stage, given the fact that there's resolution happening within Europe and across the world. So once that's complete, we'll be in a better position to be able to either put something out publicly or once we do go overt on some of those targets.
Commissioner, are you able to clarify further on those laws whether Australia was in a better legal position than many other countries perhaps to assist on this operation?
Well, I think we've used the laws operationally and successfully to protect Australians. That's a start, and as the Prime Minister has stated, we're really encouraging the Parliament to pass that SLED bill in particular and the IPO bill because we need to be ahead. We need to be a step ahead, and encrypted comms and going dark on the dark web, as you know, there's multiple crimes. If you go on there right now, you can purchase whatever you want. There's proliferation of child sexual abuse material on the dark web. It's an absolute disgrace. So for us, that's a criminal marketplace that we can't actually penetrate without that legislation.
Have there been arrests carried out already in Europe and other parts of the world or in the States since
In Europe, yes, there has, and they'll be putting out their statistics because there's about 18 different countries who've been involved in this operation.
Commissioner, a question. Sorry, you go, Matt. And arrests have been made in those 18 countries?
Yes.
Commissioner, a question for you and the same question for Mr Russo immediately afterwards, please. This must provide for law enforcement a huge reset for organised crime. Not only that they have had this app taken away from them right now, but everybody will be looking over their shoulder wondering who is being compromised by your capabilities right now and wondering who they can deal with. You would imagine that business is going to slow very, very quickly, at least for some time.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the response is. But to give you an idea too, one local chapter we've discovered in OMCG, we're making 20 million net a month out of the peddling of drugs into this country. So we know that's going to hurt them, and it'll be interesting to see what the response is. But one of the things we're going to do is now, as I said, this is just the beginning for us. We're going to push through now. There'll be more arrests. There'll be a whole range of things we're going to be able to do as a result of the success of this operation and working with the Bureau.
Perhaps, Mr Russo, from a global perspective, in terms of organised crime, those transnational links between America, Europe, Australia, Asia, how much business is going to slow right now because of this?
Well, I'll say this. The criminals should be on notice that law enforcement and partnerships all over the world are resolute in their dedication to collaboration and to continue to evolve our capabilities. And for any organization to function, no matter what it is, legitimate, criminal, or otherwise, the members of that organization have to be able to communicate. And all of those communications cannot be in person. So when criminal organizations have to engage in the logistics of moving their illicit materials, their money, organizing violence, all of that activity has to happen over a communications platform of some kind. And today's announcement and the subsequent announcements over the course of the next day and a half or so should put them on notice that indeed there is a robust network of international law enforcement agencies that are resolute in combating this global threat.
Well, it will tend to be paranoid. I mean, by its very nature. We've just heard from the Commissioner about people doing side hustles behind their bosses' back, etc. The fact that this has exposed so many names that you are known, will this not have every criminal who might have been, well, even who haven't used this app, be wondering if somebody they're dealing with has, and whether they're being looked at? I mean, it must create a good degree of paranoia and a freeze on business.
Well said.
Yeah.
Perhaps you would like to say
That is certainly our intent. And as a government, our intention is to ensure our law enforcement agencies working with their partners around the world are attacking these organised criminals at every single point, seeking to frustrate them in every link of the chain. And it is our intention that they are looking over their shoulder, because our law enforcement agencies and the partnerships we have around the world are bearing down upon them. That's what we're doing. We're bearing down upon them. But, this isn't over. This is a long way from over. Others will seek to rise up where others have fallen. And as they seek to take it out on each other, as criminals inevitably do, there will be others seeking to take advantage. And that's why the resource will continue to flow, the support will continue to be there, and the authorities that they need to do what they do every day, and to ensure that Australia can keep winning this fight against organised crime. That will be provided by our government. Now, we've got probably maybe time for one or two more on this matter, and there are other, as you can imagine, it's quite a busy day for the Commissioner and Mr Russo, and I'll have to excuse them in a second.
Commissioner, how many people in Australia were using this handset and app combination?
So we identified around about 1,600 to 1,700, which is a decent figure. It's only 5% though of the encrypted comms used in this country, and then about 9,000 globally.
And has that number rapidly increased in recent months? When did you see a surge in the use of this?
It has increased recently, and that's partly on the way it's distributed, which is by hand, and you've got to know someone, and you've got to pay a monthly fee to the syndicates who hand those devices out.
The irony, of course, is the monthly fee was being paid to law enforcement, wasn't it?
Well, we certainly I can't go into detail on that, but we certainly were able to see every handset that was handed out and attribute those to individuals.
You said 5%. That means there's 95% that's not being monitored.
Yeah, you've got other platforms like Cypher and other encrypted comms.
So there's a lot going on. That I mean, this is a start.
It is. It is, as the PM said.
And can you mentioned the technical briefing, but if we can ask you here, can you just clarify, was this app originally set up as a legitimate enterprise and then it has been subsequently taken over by law enforcement, or was it entirely set up from the start by law enforcement as a sting?
This goes back to, if you remember, Phantom Secure, which was distributed by, out of the US and the Mexican cartels and other organised crime groups as a secure comms platform just for criminal networks. So this is just the evolution of that product.